What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the chaos. I'm Ryan, and we're gonna be tackling some maintenance items on our 2008 Dodge Viper. So it's been at Toxic Customs for the last 9 months sitting in the shop. So I have a feeling our battery is smoked. So we picked up a new Optima battery to go in the car. And on these cars, it's actually already relocated to the trunk. So it comes factory that way. So that's why we're starting back here at the rear, but then we'll work our way forward, and we've got a brand new K&N filter because as it was sitting up at the shop, the factory one collected a bunch of dust and everything, so it's time for it to be changed. It's dirty, and so I figured with the K&N, I actually just went with a filter and not the whole cold air intake system because it's supposedly not as effective. So the factory air box on this thing is pretty mint, so there's no reason to switch it out if it flows pretty good. So we'll just go with the filter. But then this is the fun part. I've picked up, it's a heat shielding for our intake box and the filter itself. So this is from Doug Shelby Engineering. So this should cut down on any heat soak for the motor. So we'll kind of start here at the back and then with the boring stuff, and then work our way towards something more exciting. Like I said, the battery on these Vipers is in the trunk, or at least thankfully on, I think, Gen 3 through 5. So I think if you're one of those Gen 1, Gen 2 guys, I think they're in the rear, but like you have to take the tire off and it's a whole big process. So thankfully, I just get to pop my hatch and then dig under the carpet and it should be there. But I've never actually never accessed the battery box at all, so we're gonna pull the carpet up and see what we need. So the battery box actually appears to be like those little T30 star bits, so I have to be very careful not to strip those out. I don't know why they use those. I don't know about you all, but they are a pain in the butt because they do strip so easy, so we're gonna do this very carefully. But got my T30 and just gonna take this cover off. Well, there's only 5 of those bolts, but of course, there's always gotta be one that's gonna fight you, but they're actually a lot longer than I would have anticipated. So, but now that we got the panel off, now I'm a little curious because I'm, I don't know, 3rd or 4th owner of this car. And I've always noticed, like, and I'll show you here in a second, but I've always noticed when you look at the back of the car, there's some kind of maybe like kill switch or something. So there's a lot of wiring, extra wiring, I feel like going on than what there should be. So I'm a little perplexed by that. Maybe like you all will know what's going on with this, but I mean, I'm not gonna really mess with it. I'm just gonna leave everything as is, but it might be something that later on I could tackle and actually take off the car. So looking down in here where the battery is, I don't know exactly what this silver module is, and then we got all this extra, this is just wire loomed together and it's just hanging out up here, so I don't know what that's about, but I feel like that's not factory. And then down here, obviously you can see our battery back here, but then this tab, one, it annoys me just because it's silver and everything else, it just kind of stands out from behind the car when you're looking at it, but 2, I don't know, yeah, it looks like some type of kill switch or something, but that's where the wiring is run to. Maybe you all might know what it is or how to get rid of it. And looking at the position of the battery sitting on the tray through the hole, it's not exactly, it's kind of tucked up under there, so not gonna be quite as easy as I thought, but it shouldn't be too bad. It looks like there's just one bolt actually holding the battery down on this side. I'm hoping there's not one on the other, because if so, I don't know how I'll access it, but then we'll just take our terminals off and get to replacing with the new battery. We're gonna start with the post, and that's just a 1/2 inch, and then to disconnect our terminals are 10 mils. So we'll start with the post and work our way up. Got the old battery out, so that wasn't too bad. And it actually looks pretty clean in there, but I'm just gonna wipe it down and then we'll throw our new battery on there. And I found the date on our old battery, and it's actually not as bad as I thought. So it's from February of 2021. So here we are, it's October of 2023. So not too terribly old, but it'll just give me the peace of mind knowing that we got a fresher battery in there. And I've actually got like a battery tender wire to underneath the hood. I'm gonna see if I can transfer that to the rear, so that way I don't ever have to even open the hood. I can just plug it in, because you can access the battery, well, kind of. You can reach in far enough to like where I can plug it into a battery tender. So I'm gonna try to relocate that to the back as well. Well, now that I've actually got the pigtail out and kind of looking at the length of it and everything, I don't know if it's gonna be long enough. So, because it only has so much of a lead to actually go to a positive part and a negative. Plus, you got to be able to reach through the rear and actually plug the pigtail in. So we'll kind of see, but I think I'm gonna hold off on installing this at the moment and just go ahead and throw the new battery in, so that way I know what I'm working with as far as length goes. Well, actually, as I was putting the battery back in, I went ahead and wired up that pigtail. And I think, just from kind of playing with it now, I think I'm gonna be able to run it out the back. So I just kind of have it like zip tied to like that, the handle that goes to the battery, just so it'll kind of stay in place. And then there's like enough room, like wiggle room in between. Hopefully that battery doesn't shift. Like there's only that one little block holding it in place, but as long as it doesn't crush that pigtail, we're good. So time will tell for that, but I'm just gonna zip tie it so that way I can like just tuck it in the corner. So that way, yeah, instead of having to pop the hood every time to plug it in, I can just reach through the kind of hole in the slit in the rear bumper and grab that pigtail that way. So I wired our pigtail up. There's so many wires, just I stuck this back in here because that was that unknown wire I'm not sure about, but I ran our positive pigtail to our positive, and then obviously negative over here. And then just to kind of get the wire out of the way, there's this strap on the battery, so I've kind of zip tied it to that, and then that way when I finish plugging it in, I can just kind of tuck it in between the battery and the tray itself, so it'll hopefully stay in there and not flop around. So I might have to adjust the zip tie from here and there, but we'll kind of see how it goes. That's what I'm hoping the setup is going to look like. I know this looks a little crazy with all these wires in here, but once, you'll never see this. We'll get that cover back on, and then all of this will be hidden. Now that the battery's installed back here, you can see my pigtail, so I should just be able to reach in here, kind of pull that out. There's a cover on it. Pop that out, plug it in, and then when I'm done, just kind of tuck it back nicely where you won't be able to see it, and hopefully it won't pop out. It'll kind of stay nicely tucked in here, not going anywhere. But that's the plan, at least. Now that we got the battery knocked out, now comes the fun stuff. So we're gonna install our K&N filter, but while doing so, we're gonna install that Doug Shelby heat shield. So that, like I said, that should cut down on like our air intake temperatures and just prevent some heat soak. But there's not much to it. There's like 2 large heat shielding pieces and a couple screws, so let's get at it. Thankfully it does actually come with instructions, so that'll help us. But first things first, what I'm gonna do is actually going to have to get like the stock air bucks out of the way. So we're gonna disconnect everything, and then even like the tubes leading up to the throttle body. All of this has to come out, like the whole factory air box, because that heat shielding lives underneath it. So let's go ahead and remove the factory stuff. All right, so that wasn't too bad. So there's really not too much holding like the factory airbox in. Just be careful with the mass airflow sensor. You have to like unclip those. So there's like a little red tab that you have to like push up, and that kind of unlocks it. So then that way you can actually like push the little tab in and remove it. So when you're doing the install, you'll see what I'm talking about, but just be very careful, because like all this stuff is plastic, and it's what, over, I don't know, it's old at this point. So all this stuff's a little brittle. But now that we got the factory airbox out of the way, now we can figure out how to actually install the heat shielding, because that'll go underneath our factory air box, and then our air box will go back on top of it. So here's the factory stuff that came out. So just these 3 bolts, they don't actually thread all the way out. You got your 2 thumb screws, and then you're gonna loosen like those worm clamps, the ones closest to the throttle body, and then the whole thing will come off as one piece. So with that air box out the way, it's freed up a whole lot of space, but you'll see we got our mass airflow sensors on each side. So it's just that red pin is kind of like a lock mechanism, and then you push that black tab and pull back. So this side was easy, driver's side was easy. Passenger side wanted to fight me a little bit, and then here's that ventilation piece that I was talking about, and there's a seam right here, so I wasn't sure if this whole tube was supposed to pop off, but nope, where it connects to the actual box, you're gonna want to pull that straight back. That's all there is to it for removing the factory stuff. So now it's actually time to connect our upper part that kind of wraps around our throttle bodies and like intake tubes to the actual main heat shield that goes around the factory box. So they provide you with like the 4 little screws and washers, and then the upper mount up here, there's 4 screw holes. These are actually threaded, so it threads directly into our heat shield. But I'm gonna take my time and I'm gonna put some Loctite, which they provide you as well, on these screws before I thread them through. But I'm gonna take my time and work my way through this so I don't scratch anything. And then I actually kind of left them, I didn't tie them all the way down, just in case there's any adjustability that needs to be made once we actually set the heat shielding in the car. Now it's really the moment of truth. So now that, I mean, there's really not much to the heat shield as far as putting it together, but actually getting it to fit, that's gonna be questionable. I've got 2 of these little like nut certs. I need to put those, I removed them off the radiator to begin with, and then it comes with 2 new ones. So I'm gonna install those. So that's where those like thumb screws actually tighten to. I'm gonna do that first, and then we're just gonna be kind of trial and error setting this thing into place and getting it where it wants to sit right. All right, so after some wiggling around and kind of just test fitting, I think I found where it wants to naturally land and how it wants to sit. So I'll show you, and actually messed up and actually had to run to the store, and thankfully, like the clips that they include, it's like these little speed nuts. They're 1/4-20. I ruined a set of those, so I just had to run to the store and grab another one. But aside from that, I think I've got it figured out. So let me show you what, like how it naturally wants to sit. So the heat shield is just kind of laid up in here, kind of where it naturally wants to go. And so the points of alignment are kind of this grommet hole. So I haven't pushed that through, but there's the rubber grommet that goes there, and then your tabs that kind of connect to the radiator. So it actually slides up under, so you can kind of see there, it's wedged into place now. But those little speed nuts, I had inserted them like the factory locations, but that's wrong. So once I actually pull this box back out, I'll be able to insert those clips on our heat shielding itself. So then it'll just thread through the radiator support and then into our nut certs. So where I jacked up before was, and these things are probably hard to tell, but these things are mangled because once you put them in there, they kind of lock into place. So I don't really know how to get them out without mangling them. So that's what led me to the store. But like I said, hopefully if you do it correctly, you don't end up having to run to the store. But if you do, it's the just 140-20 speed certs. But these should slide on. Make sure I'm doing this correct, because it's gonna thread, this thing threads down into it like that. So it needs to be slid on there with the kind of nut part down. So I'm just gonna slide these on here. Whew. So when they actually click in, I mean, like, they ain't going anywhere, that's good, but yeah, it makes it impossible if you mess up to get them back out. So those are inserted, and then our little rubber grommet just fits through this little hole into the body, but that should be it kind of holding this down. And then we'll be able to, now that I kind of know where it sits, then we'll be able to actually put our air box in with our heat shielding in place. So let's throw this back in the car and see how she fits. Wow, we're done, and I'm sweating to death out here in this North Carolina heat, but this should have been, and on paper it's easy, but when it actually comes to every little thing has to line up just perfectly. So it's actually, wasn't even that the heat shield what was fighting me, was the actual like air box itself. So like there's these like little tabs where the top of the box connects to the bottom of the box, and you got your filter sandwiched in between. Those little tabs have to slide in, but of course, when one's angled down and one's coming up, like they just don't, they don't align. And so you have to like, I don't know, just play with it and hold your mouth right until you get it correct. But it's in there now, so everything feels tight. Since we did change the battery today, and this one, I mean, I would start the car anyway, but want to make sure it starts after the battery install, and then two, want to make sure we don't have any like air leaks or anything like that. So I tightened those worm clamps around the throttle bodies, and it seems like that rubber has a tight seal, but if I suspect a leak, then that's probably where it's going to be coming from. Just if for whatever reason like that rubber lip got hung up on the backside where you can't see, I don't know, but we'll start the car here in a second. I do want to point out with that heat shielding in place, it was hard enough to get those mass airflow sensors unclipped without anything hindering like your ability to get to them. But now that those heat shields are on each side, if and when those mass airflows need to come back out, oh, that's gonna be a pain because you just don't have any space to work with. So you gotta kind of outweigh the pros and the cons. So the pros is no more heat soak. One, it adds like a little something extra to your engine bay, and then yeah, no heat soak, keep the intake temperatures down. But then the negative side is, yeah, things are a little more difficult to line up at this point, and then accessing those maps is going to be interesting. But let's jump in the car and start her up, make sure we have no issues. We have interior lights and the gauges light up, so at least we do have power to the car. But yeah, let's give it a start and then see if our battery works, which I think it does. Started a lot easier that time, so I think the battery is a lot healthier. That new battery helped. But let's go check for air leaks on our intake. I think we're solid. I'm gonna take it down the road and back just to make sure, but everything so far, I don't feel any leaks or anything like that, and the car is running, seems to be running fine. No engine lights, nothing like that. So hopefully the test drive goes well. So the car did flawless. So battery works, and even like I'd heard the windows kind of have to go through like a relearn process. I'm not sure when that kicks in or what, but I was actually nervous about replacing the battery just because I feel like no matter whether you have it unhooked for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, it's gonna act the same. So try to change the battery as quickly as possible, but so far so good. Like I had Slam help check like the window clearance, because when you actually pop the door open, the window slides down just a little bit to then clear the frame. Well, because the frame is the car itself, so don't want to lose any blue paint. But all seemed fine, and back like it drove normal, everything like that. So didn't hear anything funky as we were driving. So I think we can call it a success. glad we were able to knock out those maintenance items today. So having a fresh battery and then having a fresh filter in there just give me the peace of mind to drive the heck out of the car and not worry that, man, if I drive somewhere, I'm gonna park it and then not be able to start it again. So even though that battery was, what I say, 2 years old at this point, a little over 2 years old, it'd probably been fine, but she definitely feels a lot healthier. Like when I went to actually start the car, that it fired right up with no hesitation. So that just makes me feel better. But if you have any questions about any of the stuff we installed today, whether it be the battery or the Doug Shelby Engineering heat shield or a K&N filter, put it in the comments below. I'll be happy to help you out. But if you haven't already, make sure you smash that subscribe button and we'll catch you on the next one.